Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Like a New Yorker. We are at the 16th episode, and I want to thank everybody for following us. It's been a ride so far, and we're very grateful for your support. And of course, please remember to like this video and share it if you like it, and to subscribe to our channel to and activate the notifications in order to be posted about our future videos. And because the name of this show is Like a New Yorker, you know that we like to talk about many different stuff about pop culture, entertainment, fashion, lifestyle, and New York City, of course. And today we're going to focus on New York City because there is really a lot going on. Of course, we are approaching this new phase for coronavirus, trying to see how to manage the reopening. We are fully in summer right now, and still our lives are affected by the pandemic, but slowly we are going back to some normality. At least this summer has been great so far, so we can enjoy some outdoor or parks, beaches. So in New York, things are slowly going back to normal, even if, of course, the future is uncertain. Now there is a big controversy about school reopenings, and of course, I'm pretty sure. As myself, I'm not a parent. I don't have kids, but in my family, my brother, my cousins have kids. I'm pretty sure if you don't have kids, you know a lot of people with kids, and you know how parents are concerned about the school reopening. They do know that it's necessary for kids to go back to school. Of course, everybody is concerned about health and safety, but it is undeniable that kids are suffering and parents are suffering as well. In my family, I can see that. But of course, the attention span for kids and to online classes is very low. It's very hard to get them, to be committed the same way. Compare when they have to go to classes, and of course, for parents, this is a big deal because of course they have to take care of their kids full time. Now, let's see how this is gonna play out. This morning, Governor Cuomo said, made clear that it's a state decision. I don't know how, exactly. He wants to really put his face on this, considering that people are outraged about the possibility that school won't reopen. But at this point, we know that unfortunately this crisis got political. So here now everything it's very confusing because you don't know exactly when and where the science stops and when the politics start. It sounds like pretty much political right now. There are these ideological stands on about what to do when we should all come together trying to figure out what is best to do. But this is not exactly what's going on right now. And very likely in the future, in terms of relationship between the authorities and citizens, is not going to get any better, considering that there are going to be, and there are. That's what we are reporting today, that there are, we see actions taken by citizens and businesses as a consequence of the riots and the destruction that took place a few weeks ago, which again, yes, there were protests for sure, and we all know that the right to protest is legit. You might agree, disagree about the message, about the intentions, but of course, everybody in America has the right to protest. But we all know that that was part of the protest were the riots and the destruction. And one way or another, the two facts were related. And because of the destruction that followed the protest, there are areas in New York, especially Madison Avenue, Soho and Union Square that were heavily affected in Manhattan. So the news that broke today is that one of the um, businesses association, the one in Madison Avenue, it's suing Governor Cuomo over looting. And this is from page 6 of the New York Post. So here we can see that I'm gonna let's see if I can make it a little bit larger for you. It should be fine. So here you can see that the governor here being thrown a fat lawsuit. The thrower's lawyer, Sol Struzzulo, says. So the damages asked by the lawyer Struzzulo is an estimated 100 million, and the co-defendants are the NYPD, the commissioner, Shia, of New York City, Bill de Blasio, and the state of New York, among others. So this official notice of claim has been filed with the Court of Claims, and the claimant is Domus Design Center, aka DDC, 134 Madison Avenue. This is a very important center. Is an iconic landmark on Madison Avenue, and it's a home of it's a multi-stories building, home of one of the most prestigious and iconic design brands. So the issue deals with the May 29th frightening night when looters, rioters, and thieves terrorized our city, vandalized our streets, and blocked our shops. So the lawyer Strasulo continues. Cuomo should have worried about hospital reform instead of bail reform. Getting a free pass, some criminals were not able to be detained, pending trial, and now we have looters. Who'd have imagined we'd have to board up our stores? We are not in Afghanistan. Places like Saks Fifth Avenue, Louis Vuitton, Prada, Rolex being bombed out. So here again, this is the very first legal step taken officially against the city of New York and the officials and the representatives. And here they also mention that very likely this can become a class action. Now, of course, being a citizen of New York, a resident of New York, my concern is that, I agree with this lawsuit. I support this lawsuit. But the point is that, unfortunately, state officials, local officials are not going to be personally liable. Ultimately, it's going to be, if any damage will be granted, any reparation will be granted, it's going to come from taxpayers' money. So ultimately, from my money, our money. And that's what is really sad and outraging, that ultimately these people were absolutely irresponsible. They didn't do nothing, not to mention the hypocrisy that regular people and small businesses weren't able to open, weren't allowed to open, and as a matter of fact, treated as criminals when basically protesters and rioters were granted to do basically whatever they wanted. Now, peaceful protests and riots in both cases, if the concern was public health, of course, even protests should have been stopped, because we all got our constitutional rights waived, basically, over the last weeks. So if we are all equal and we all have the same rights, again, the answer towards the protesters and rioters should have been very simple. But of course, it's very easy to target a single and individual citizens or single businesses instead of mobs. So, but in terms of practical consequences, now this lawsuit has been thrown, and very likely many other businesses and entities will file similar claims. So we'll keep an eye on this and see what are going to be the following developments. Now, another story that is very interesting that I want to talk to you about is basically what concerns the liability for what happened in the nursing homes here in New York, because of course many people lost their beloved ones because of the decision of Governor Cuomo to send COVID patients to nursing homes. Now, at the beginning, we know that in this case, there is this legal shield that Governor Cuomo put. And at the beginning, we thought that this shield was to protect nursing homes. Now we're seeing that more likely this shield was put to protect himself. And again, this is a disgrace, especially because for the media fell in love with Governor Cuomo claiming about his leadership, but I mean, I live in New York, and again, what I care about it's New York City. I don't really care about the politics. I've always been independent. I have supported candidates on both sides, Republicans and Democrats, because I want the best for my country and I want the best for my city. And I care about the candidate, his policies. And in this case, what's happening in New York, it is a disaster. It's evident. It's just that the legacy media, the old corrupted media, or mainstream, if you want to call them like that. Of course, they pursue a political agenda. So, they always throw the diversity card on the table. And again, Mayor de Blasio has been a disgrace for this city. Everybody can see that. We just want something better for New York. Not this. Even we we are missing Bloomberg, who he was a decent mayor during his first mandate, but then it was a downward spiral. But really, De Blasio is making us missing Bloomberg, for God's sake. And not mentioning what happened, of course, with Governor Cuomo, some really disgraceful choice that he made. But here again, I don't want to go on a rant, but it's just that I'm outraged to see the state of the city right now. And if you talk to regular people, and again, you pretty much, I'm sure you know this if you live in New York City, but it is true that many people have left the city. I mean, I've spoken with friends who, when they started reopening their businesses around Manhattan, especially, they told me that the only thing they saw basically were moving trucks. And they said that it was scary. It was really disturbing to see, and people greeting the owners of the local shops in their neighborhood, saying, we're going for good. We already signed our kids in other schools, and we ain't coming back anytime soon. So yeah, it is serious. It's very serious. And if you live in New York, we are concerned. We really are concerned about the future of the city. And here, I just mentioned in the first segment that there are at the moment legal steps taken by private citizens and business owners against the city and the state and other officials because of what happened with the protests and the riots. And same thing is going to happen here for the nursing home disasters, where again it's really incomprehensible why Governor Cuomo decided to send these patients to nursing home because he was saying that the all the measures taken were to protect the most vulnerables, which mean elders and people with pre-existing conditions. So it seems pretty obvious that you should have avoided to send COVID patients to nursing homes, but for some reason he did it. And again, before he did that, he approved this measure where basically he shielded hospitals and nursing homes. Here we see another coverage from by the New York Post. So the news is that two state legislators from New York City jointly announced a bill Friday to repeal the controversial law that largely shields hospitals and nursing homes from liability related to the coronavirus crisis. State Senator Alessandra Biaggi, Democrat from the Bronx, and Assemblyman Ron Kim, Democrats from Queens, say they wanted to strip away the blanket corporate immunity granted, despite their objections, by Governor Andrew Cuomo. They continued saying, it's abundantly clear from the very beginning that our vulnerable population included our nursing homes, said Biaggi, who agreed to co-sponsor a bill Kim introduced earlier. Well, here it's not really phrased well, but oh, okay. So they say that from the very beginning, vulnerable population included nursing homes, of course, yeah. And from the very beginning, our nursing homes did not receive the full support that they needed from the state and from others. Kim said the issue was kind of personal to him because his uncle, Sung Kim, died in a Flushing nursing home on April 16 after suffering all the symptoms of the virus we shall not name. So here now we see that the Emergency or Disaster Treatment Protection Act was included in the 177 billion state budget bill for 2020-2021 that Cuomo signed on April 3rd. It grants healthcare facilities and their employees immunity from any liability, civil or criminal, for any harm or damages allegedly inflicted while providing services amid the pandemic. So again, this is a blanket immunity granted to healthcare facilities and employees. And again, of course, we all understand the reason why. In if we look at this in good faith, yeah, of course, it makes sense because this is something new. This is something that we don't know still. We don't know yet how to treat, and we don't want the workers in the healthcare who are struggling. Now they've been struggling for weeks to fight this pandemic because they made a mistake. And that's, understandably so, reasonably so, because they don't know exactly how to treat this. Of course, they would get in trouble. But, it's a fine line because here nobody is talking about the victims. Nobody is talking about people who basically died because the chances were increased by the reckless initiative of people in charge, like Governor Cuomo. Again, he didn't have to send people to nursing homes. He had options. And for some reason, he didn't pursue those options. And again, but he covered himself, basically, indirectly, covering healthcare facilities and workers from any liability. So here again, from a legal standpoint, we can see the first actions taken in order to somehow overturn what's been going on over the last months in New York City. So here the context in general here in New York City, the situation is pretty problematic. So it's really it's a legit question to wonder how does the future look like for New York City, and again. I'm trying always to be practical and realistic in a time like this. It's frankly easy or easier to indulge in pessimism and to be dark, and you see a lot of fear mongering going around, and we don't like that. Of course, this is very very tough. This is very hard. The city has been hit very hard. It is the epicenter of the world pandemic in terms of number of cases and casualties. And here, of course, I'm going to try to offer you two different perspectives and to show you that the problems for New York didn't start with this pandemic. It was something that in the city here, and again, I've been living here for years now. I was born in Brooklyn, which I still love. It's the place in New York I call home, but there's been a lot going on in New York, and most of the real estate developments and the gentrification has covered a lot of the problems of the soul of the city, the identity of the city. And again, on one hand, I want to say that the city before, right before this pandemic, was really blooming, was really blooming, was glowing. It was great to see some neighborhoods that were recently, the renovation were was recently completed, especially the meatpacking district after years and years of construction. Hudson Yard, of course, the completion of the works at the World Trade Center, the new mini ferry service, and the new mini ferry stations that we had in Brooklyn, Navy Yard, the service Rockaway, Rockaway in Brooklyn and Queens. So really, the city was glowing. It was really exciting to be in New York again after 9/11, after the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, after Sandy. It was really after so many years. It was great to see the city in so bright, but at the same time, huge issues in terms of sustainability of life in the city. Manhattan has become basically a gigantic financial investment. Um, Real estate in Manhattan is almost exclusively related to financial investments, and the gentrification going on in Brooklyn, in part of Queens. A lot of concerns for the, again, sustainability of life for regular people with regular jobs in New York. The choice that Bloomberg made to make Manhattan basically the billionaires island, and of course, yeah, again, a lot of money put in because of these investments, and again, of course, tourism in New York, always big, 40 million, 50 million tourists every year. Again, very mixed bag, but you can see that it was already in 2007, 2017, sorry, that the Jeremiah Moss published the famous book, Vanishing New York: How a Great City Lost Its Soul, from July 25, 2017. So here in this book already, Jeremiah Moss pointed out what I told you, that which was the perception of everybody in New York City. The fact that, of course, the hustle, the city that never sleeps, the melting pot, the frenetic lifestyle. It's what makes New York New York. But at the same time, again, the soul of the city has vanished slowly. Where you have people who, yeah, come from all over the places, live in New York for a few years, and then they leave. They don't really care about the city. They don't really care about the iconic neighborhoods around the city. And so here we can go over a little bit what is the abstract of the book. Again, this is to show you that these concerns go back to a few years ago. So the book is about it's an unflinching chronicle of gentrification in the 21st century and a love letter to lost New York by the creator of the popular and incendiary blog Vanishing New York. For generation, New York City has been a mecca for artists, writers, and other hopefuls longing to be part of its rich cultural exchange and unique social fabric. But today, modern gentrification is transforming the city from an exceptional iconoclastic metropolis into a suburbanized luxury zone with a price tag only the 1% can afford. Exactly. I'm going to repeat this. The city transformed from an exceptional iconoclastic metropolis into a suburbanized luxury zone with a price tag only the 1% can afford. Jane Jacobs, for the digital age, blogger and cultural commentator Jeremiah Moss, has emerged as one of the most outspoken and celebrated critics of this dramatic shift. In Vanishing New York, he reports on the city's development in the 21st century, a period of hyper-gentrification that has resulted into the shocking transformation of beloved neighborhoods and the loss of treasures' unofficial landmarks. In prose, that the village voice has called a mixture of dark sorrow, poeticism, and lyric wit, Moss leads us on a colorful, guided tour of the most changed parts of town, from the Lower East Side and Chelsea to Harlem and Williamsburg, lovingly utilizing iconic institutions as they are replaced with soulless, upscale boutiques, luxury condo towers, and suburban chains. Again, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And this goes back to 2017. So you see, when they say that, New York strong, that New York has faced other crises in the past, yes, but those the reason why New York was able to overcome those challenges is because the people who live here were willing to fight for it. If you, again, we and here in New York, we all struggle through. The reason why we care also so much is because, on one hand, we struggle here, and we want to stay here because we know that here, we have much more opportunities that we can have anywhere else. But somehow we're also trapped in this routine, so we don't leave also because we can't leave. So we have to get this, we have to make this place better. Because also, to move out from New York City, we know that then, if that doesn't turn out well for you, then it's going to almost be impossible to come back to New York. But see what happened now that wealthy people basically conquered, especially Manhattan or other gentrified neighborhood. Well, people with money always have options, so they just left. They just left. And this is what is most concerning. Instead of trying to figure out what to do to make the city a better place, they just left because they can afford it. And can you really blame them? It's hard. It's very hard to blame them. If you have a family, kids, and you have the chance of the option to take your family in a safer place, a better place, yeah, of course. As some already commentators have stressed out in the past, people are going to vote with their feet. The media can try to defend and protect de Blasio and Governor Cuomo as long as they want, but people are going to make their choices. And if you see people leaving the city, that's the best way to understand exactly what's going on here in New York City. So again, it's a very troubled situation, and it doesn't look good. But I always like to challenge my own opinions, and it is interesting that actually I found this article on Forbes, another a media outlet that used to be prestigious and reliable, but they all now participate in the circus of the mainstream media, where nobody really cares about the facts, and people basically pursue their agendas. And it's sad, but again, the way you test your opinion in order to see how grounded they are, how solid they are, is again to look for other opinions. And I was surprised to see in this article by Remy Reisner in again on Forbes, that gives a very interesting take on the current situation. So he stresses out: don't believe all you see in the news. New York City is not disappearing. It has certainly been a hard hit. The Big Apple has become the epicenter of the pandemic. The death toll is high, the anxiety is deep, and the images are brutal. But New York is tough. It has seen big crises before. So again, the crisis I mentioned before. And New York has always come back stronger than ever. Yes, but again, my concern is that the people who live in New York now are different people. They are investors. They are not residents. Anyway, but what the Remy Reisner says here is that he mentioned some other key factors. So he says that the resilience of New York is such that the real estate market became soft for only 6 to 9 months after 9/11 before bouncing back. And resiliency is a trademark of the Big Apple. It is home to the greedy, to the ambitious, and to the best of the best brains in all sectors all at once. It is no longer solely a financial center. The tech industry is now a prominent sector. Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple, and I would say also Spotify, I saw in the World Trade Center, have all recently made highly substantial investment in and commitments to New York to expand their footprints. Madison Avenue is still the preeminent advertising hub of the world, even if, I mentioned before, they're going to sue the city. Manhattan is a world capital for the media industry and features a very strong base of healthcare employment, often tied into top universities like Columbia, NYU, Cornell, and the Rockefeller University. Yes, it is also true, though it doesn't mention this, that our top universities for years and years were fed by foreign students, specifically Chinese students. And the only ones who were able basically to pay the very expensive tuitions of these prestigious universities, American families don't make enough money to send their kids to these universities. So again, all these systematic factors that he mentions, again, I see some systematic, underground changes. But again, these are also, good points that the author is making. So the city that never sleeps has extensive nightlife, employing nearly 300,000 professionals. But we have to see how this, goes along with the reopening of the city, which the authorities are opposing. It is also a tourism powerhouse, hosting over 65 million travelers per year. I don't know. This article goes back May 19th. This guy is talking about, the pandemic never happened. So we don't know. Yeah, it's very likely that when it's going to be possible to travel again, people are going to, still coming in New York City because it's New York. So yeah, in perspective, I see that what he's saying is that, yeah, what I like the most about this article is that actually, looks forward in the future, where we are all prisoners of the moment right now, and also it's an election year, so the political controversies are overcharged, of course, yeah, so that's what I like about this article is that he's actually shows that he's not prisoner of the moment, and actually shows some consistent, compelling, stable vision towards the future. Also, it's a fashion mecca, and it has a large manufacturing sector. Think of the garment district, which is now foreseen to expand after decades of outsourcing threatened its survival. And again, I think this is a very good point. I made this point actually in one of my previous videos, where I think that the near-shoring and the back-shoring, after China has basically closed its borders and won't open them anytime soon. Also, there is a different perception in Washington where we need to take some of these jobs back. I suggested that all these real estate, all these venues and premises around the city, abandoned by many corporations that went bankrupt, or all these office spaces, also residential spaces. One way we can use these spaces is having manufacturing in them. So this is actually a good point that I really agree with. Also, the city has a size of a standalone country with almost 20 million inhabitants for the whole metropolitan area. Yeah, it's true. There is basically this inner economy that just because people need to buy stuff, yeah, of course, is there. Now, New York restaurants and small businesses may permanently close en masse, just like during the financial crisis, but they will be recreated, revisited, and will reopen under new forms and concepts and make the city leap forward. Recall that food courts and co-working began to thrive after 2008. Our lifestyles will evolve, and we will witness a new wave of innovation once the pandemic is defeated. Then This is another very good point. Importantly, one of the main differences between this crisis and the financial crisis thus far is that there is less exodus from the city. This is quite arguable. Uh, we have to see. Despite heavy job losses, the unemployed are currently receiving increased government benefits enacted by the recent CARES Act. For some, this will sum up to a multiple of rent payments. Hence, fewer inhabitants are likely to move out, and they believe it will be a faster process to restart New York as the full economy reopens. Again, yeah, of course, the financial crisis is over. It lasted, good 2 3 years. So we are only 4 months into this pandemic. So again, I like this approach that the author has. That, as a matter of fact, if we look back at the past, those crises were longer than this. Of course, 9/11, financial crisis, Sandy, they were like very temporary events. Nothing spread over such an amount of time, and not this systematic as we're seeing like this. But again, I like the perspective. We have to think what's going to be New York in 6 months, 12 months from now. And it is true. Back then, there was no welfare basically supporting the citizens and residents of New York City. So in this case, instead, many people received support. And it is true that so many times the support received was a multiple of the rent. So in terms of financial, at least at the moment, financial situation is not as bad as the during the financial crisis. So another good point is that there is a general sense of the will by the public officials not to just restart, but to improve and move forward. We can expect to see investments in infrastructures, starting with the Public Transportation Authority, the MTA, which was already close to the brink financially before March. Additionally, prior to the crisis, the dialogue between the private and the public sectors tended to be confrontational. Nevertheless, both sectors have come together to assist New Yorkers hand in hand, and this is also true. Last but not least, a powerful factor will help New York urbanism. The Fed and Treasury Department is anticipated to inject trillions of dollars into the economy to help the economy heal. And the Fed has already cut back the interest rate to 0%. Typically, major real estate markets attract many of these dollars, and none is more major than the Big Apple. Low interest rates are direct stimuli on hard assets, and with the magnitude of the current money printing, investors will look at New York real estate just like they look at gold, as a hedge against inflation. And this is it's a very good point. Technically speaking, he is right. Once the pandemic is behind us, New York City should attract ample capital again, leading to job creations in the most forward-looking industries, renewal and investments in infrastructure. The tech boom will continue. So will the nascent cryptocurrency industry. This looks like a plug for something. Maybe the author is interested in cryptocurrency, but it doesn't explain how cryptocurrency could help us like in this crisis. The Brooklyn rebirth will develop all the more, pushing urban renewal deeper and deeper into untouched areas, and with hopefully a better partnership between public officials and real estate investors. Every cloud has a silver lining. Again, I'm optimistic by nature, and I do want to look at the future in a bright, positive way. I think that some of the points that the author here outlined are legit. They are solid. Some others, I think, it doesn't take into consideration some systemic general difference that we see in the current situation that we are experiencing compared to other crises that we had. But again, I appreciate that there is the intention to look in a fair and constructive way at the future. So this is my take on what's going on in New York. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and if you watched the video so far, thank you for following us. If you like what we're doing here, please remember to smash that like button, to share the video if you will, and also to subscribe to our channel and activate the notifications so you always are informed when we release the new video. So for all these now, thank you again for following us. Please be safe, take care, and see you soon.